Hello, everybody. Welcome to TFC Podcast, where we want to strengthen your faith one conversation at a time. I am your host, Frankie Benitez, and today I have with me one of the best moms that I know, Miss Tina Smith. She's an amazing mom, and she has a lot of wisdom, and I've gotten to talk to her several times about parenting, and so she's such an inspiration, and I thought we would share all of her wisdom with the world. So welcome. I'm just so glad you're here.
Thank you, Frankie. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know you, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself so people get to know you?
Okay. Well, I've worked here at the church as the office manager, bookkeeper for 20 plus years. I've been a single mom twice in my life. I am currently a single mom. And my oldest daughter is Brittany. She's 29. Kaylee is 16. And then I have two grandsons. Brentley is fixing to turn 8 this week.
Wow.
And then Zayden is 5. And I actually took them in full time when Zayden was 3 weeks old and Brentley was 2.5. And I still have custody of them, but they don't currently live with me full time. They've been with their mom for about a year now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I mean, your story is so inspirational, and just seeing you work through everything that life has thrown at you is really inspiring. It's like, wow, how can she do it? She's a superwoman. So what would you say, though, is the hardest thing that you've faced as a single parent?
Wow. There's a lot of challenges being a single parent. The most obvious are things like finances and dealing with loneliness. I think one of the challenges that I've had that maybe kind of goes unseen, but really has, I think, a huge impact on the parent-child relationship in the long-term sense is what I call the guilt trap. Of course, as parents, we want our kids to grow up in a great atmosphere. Right. We want to provide the best childhood for them as we can. And I think people who have gone through divorce will often look at their children in a different light because of, their world getting turned upside down. They all of a sudden have, 2 homes where they live, where they go back and forth. Maybe they had to move. Maybe they had to give up friends, change schools. Right. And all of those thoughts and things kind of start overwhelming you as a parent. And it's really easy to fall into wanting to parent maybe from a guilty perspective. And that, wow, I think, is probably the biggest challenge, because it just changes the foundation of how you're raising your kids. Like if you're responding to your kids out of guilt, then you're probably not keep being really consistent with boundaries. You're probably, you can kind of talk yourself out of disciplinary things and maybe let the kid get away with more than what they should be, when wow, in reality, what they're needing from you, because they do have so many changes going on in their world, is they need consistency from you. They need stability from you. They need some things to stay the same. And so I probably didn't do as well with that the first time around. That obviously I learned a lot, and I feel like I've done a much better job in the past 15 to 16 years with not falling into that trap of feeling guilty. I mean, I think we need to recognize, yes, we are going to feel guilty. There's no way around that.
Right.
But I think it's how we deal with that guilt and not getting stuck there and trying to think about the long-term repercussions of just constantly parenting out of that guilt. It's just not healthy.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I admire of you the most, because and we've talked this with my wife several times, how timely you are when it comes to discipline and just almost knowing when to push the gas pedal and when to push the brakes. And so, because one of the luxuries that, two-parent home have over single-parent homes is that you have the other person to bounce off ideas, or even if you're getting a little tense, the other person can come and kind of help you to relax. Or if you're being too lenient, the other person can kind of step in. So as a single parent, how do you figure that out, of being too strict or too lenient?
Probably by making a lot of mistakes. You don't have that immediate person there in the situation who can help you. So, it's a lot of trial and error. And right. I think you have to just give yourself, as with any parent, whether you're co-parenting together right. or whether you're single parent, you have to recognize and know that you are going to make mistakes and you are all not going to get it right every single time. I think with being too lenient, that one, it'll kind of start showing itself, even if you don't recognize it right off the bat. Like if you're dealing with, a child who is having a temper tantrum or something, or right. when they don't get their way. That thing, if after 2 or 3 weeks of giving that child some discipline, if it's not working, more than likely you're not being hard enough on that child, or you're being too lenient with that child. So if a behavior keeps repeating itself, then more than likely you're going to need to tighten up the ropes a little bit and maybe change the discipline that you're using with that child. And it can be difficult because every child is different. What works with one child may not work with another child. So it is a lot of trial and error. The one thing about being too hard or maybe overreacting or maybe being too strict in the moment, I think with that, often I usually don't get away with it. The Lord usually convicts me pretty quickly. And I think it's real important as parents to acknowledge right. to the child, no matter how old the child is, that, you know what, I may have responded a little harsh with that, and I'm sorry. I think it's real important for us to role model to our kids, wow. to be accountable for our actions. It's okay to make mistakes. I'm acknowledging that I made a mistake, and next time that happens, I'm not going to respond that way. We're going to do this. This will be your consequence. And so it is good too. You can bounce things off of people around you. You can have right. conversations with other parents and say, hey, I've got this going on with my child. And, what I'm doing is not working. What do you think? And get some wisdom from other people. But, yeah, in the moment, there's just not a whole lot of, the Holy Spirit's there to help you. But, you're going to make those mistakes. And you got to give yourself grace to be able to make those mistakes and know that your child's not ruined, for you making mistakes and not responding correctly all the time.
Yeah, that is so key, right? To be gracious to your own self.
Yes, very true.
So how do you deal though with those times? Because, as parents, you get tired sometimes, or you think, man, I'm trying to do the best that I can, but it doesn't seem to be working, or, I don't know, you're doing the best job you can, and all of a sudden, something happens. So how do you strengthen yourself when you're approaching this point of oh my goodness, I'm hitting my limit spiritually, emotionally, and perhaps even physically. How do you strengthen yourself? Maybe tell us a couple of practical things and maybe stories where you've okay, this is how I did it this time.
Well, I've had my fair share of reaching my limit, definitely. That is, especially if you have multiple children, I think that makes it more difficult. That can definitely wear on you more physically and emotionally. One story that I can think of. Kaylee was probably about 11. Brentley was 3.5-ish, and Zayden was a baby. He was probably 6 months old, and we all have our level of stress that we can handle before we break down. Right. And, on most given days, you can handle a lot of stress. But on some days, if your whole day is just kind of, not going the right way, we all been there. I had a very stressful day at work, and then left work and, sat through the long line of picking up Kaylee from school, which can be very stressful. And then went and picked up the boys from my mom's and took them home. And I remember Kaylee being at the table. She was working on homework. She had some questions, and Brentley he was always just right under my feet, just constantly needing, just attention. He didn't play well by himself. And I think Zayden was in the living room getting into something he wasn't supposed to be getting into. I was trying to cook dinner. I was just feeling really overwhelmed in the moment. And, you know, I started hitting my breaking point. I felt myself kind of lashing out at the kids. I was kind of raising my voice at them. I was not giving grace at all. And I remember Kaylee just kind of turning her head and kind of looking at me like, Mom, like, did you really just, you know, why are you, you know, I got this look from her, and man, my heart was just like, oh Lord, what am I doing here? You know, and I was like, you know what? I need a timeout. And so I asked Kaylee, I said, you know what? I need you to go to your room for a few minutes. I'll come and get you. I had a little pen in the living room where Brentley could play, you know, and it kept him safe. It was a little gated thing. So I put some toys in there. I put him in there. I put Zayden in his crib. I gave him some toys. And I went outside. And I took some deep breaths. I sat down in a chair. I probably cried a little bit. But I reset myself. Like, I prayed for a minute, and I just got myself back into a place of peace because I'd lost my peace. And so 10 minutes maybe, I was outside, and then I went back in and got the kids. You know, it was okay that they were crying. It was okay that, you know, they were safe. They weren't being harmed or hurt. Got them, we reset, and it was just, I had a different perspective, and things went a little bit, you know, easier, and I just kind of had to do that. So I really feel like single parents need to find those, I call them pockets of time, pockets of me time. And I call them pockets of me time because it doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. Sometimes it can just be 15 or 20 minutes that we need some peace and quiet, that we need to just maybe lay our head down for a second, or, you know, call a friend, maybe get some advice. But it's okay to put the kids in their room. It's okay to put them in a safe place. Just explain to them that we are having a quiet moment. You know, Mommy needs a break.
It's really good.
And give yourself that time to kind of regroup, because it is easy to have those moments where you just feel so overwhelmed. And I think also planning ahead and getting people to help you, whether it's once a month or twice a month, for you to have 30 minutes or an hour. You know, sometimes it was just exciting to go to the grocery store without the kids. You know, I know that sounds funny, but, you know,
Absolutely.
You're not having to battle with all the kids. And so if you can find a family member or a friend or someone who, you know, can I have an hour? Can you just watch my kids for an hour? And, you know, whether you go for a walk or a run, however you de-stress, but planning and being intentional about giving yourself those small pockets of me time, I just think is real important for keeping yourself more level. And then as far as spiritually, I was thinking I had to get really intentional with staying close to the Lord and really keeping myself built up spiritually, because I found Sunday mornings weren't enough to get me through the week. And I started setting an alarm on my phone in the mornings, my travel time by myself in my car from like 8:45 to 9. And I set an alarm because if you don't set an alarm and you're not intentional about it, it was real easy for my mind just to kind of wander during that time. And, you know, you're thinking about what you've got going on.
Right.
But I would set an alarm, and I would spend that time in the car either listening to a worship song, or I would pray, or I would, you know, just pray in the Spirit, whatever I needed to do to just kind of build myself up spiritually for the day. And I would try to do it in the morning to kind of, you know, give myself, kind of start my day off right. Because trying to find extra time to just really sit down and read your Bible a lot, I mean, it's good if you can find that time, but I think you have to just be realistic sometimes, and sometimes that time is just not there. So, yeah.
I love everything that you're saying. And by the way, going grocery shopping with kids is terrible. It's a terrible idea.
It is horrible. I mean, I don't really enjoy grocery shopping anyway, but yeah, you add some kids on top of it, and it can be the most stressful, most stressful thing.
And talking about, you know, grocery shopping, finances. Let's talk about finances, which in the research that I was doing, that was cited as almost the number one struggle that single parent homes face, which is finances, and I know it can be challenging. And so, what is the best advice you can offer to a single parent who is struggling financially? Maybe tell us a couple of things you've done in your personal life.
Well, I would start off by saying simplify, simplify, simplify.
Really good.
Kids don't really need all the latest gadgets, all the latest,
so true.
Designer clothes and stuff. What kids need is time and love. So you can just take that stress off of you to begin with. Some practical things that I have done with finances over the years is, number one, I set a budget. I learned to live within my means.
Really good.
I would get paid weekly, and so what I would do is I sat down and I calculated how much of my weekly check that I needed to go towards my rent, towards my electric bill, my main bills that I had every month, and I would deposit that amount into the checking account, and then whatever was left over, maybe it was $100 a week, I would use the envelope system. I don't know if anyone's listened to Dave Ramsey, but I used to listen to Dave Ramsey a lot on the radio, and that was one of his concepts, was the envelope. And so I had an envelope for gas, I had an envelope for food, I would have an envelope for entertainment, and I would get my cash back in 10s and 20s, and I would put my money in my envelopes. And it just kind of helped me stay on track, because if I put all that money in my wallet, it's easy just to spend it. But if I'm looking in my envelopes every time I need to go to the grocery store, every time I need to, maybe, if I needed to go buy a necessity item for the child, maybe it was shoes or a shirt, or maybe they, needed something, I would look in my envelopes, and that's how I would determine, if I had the money or not to do that this week. And I did have entertainment in there too, because I do think it's important to plan for your entertainment.
That's so good.
Yes, with your kids. Also, another thing, it's okay if you don't feed your kids filet mignon and, expensive, food all the time. Right. I mean, it would be nice, if we could eat that way. But most kids are simple. And a lot of kids like to eat the same thing over and over again.
Chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And, it's okay to do that. For if you've got a week where money is tighter and you don't have a lot in your food budget that week, okay, so you live on grilled cheese sandwiches for the week. Or, you do peanut butter and jelly. Usually the kids don't mind. Usually the kids don't complain, especially if you kind of let them pick, so, you give them 3 or 4 choices and you take, 2 or 3 of their favorites. Those things are pretty inexpensive. Right. And, you get by. And, it's not something that's going to traumatize them, when they get older. You just do what you can. And
I love what you said about the fact that their most basic need, it's not stuff. It's love. It's attention. It's quality time.
Absolutely.
And those things can be free.
Yes, they can definitely be free. Also, I just want to mention, don't be afraid to look for resources for help. Right. I mean, we have the food bank, our food ministry here at the church. I mean, there have been times I've had to ask Jim if I could go down and get some food out of Love and Deed. There's WIC, there's food stamps, there's things out there that are there to help in time of need. And you shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed, to be reaching out and getting those helps if they're available to you and you qualify for them. Then by all means, take advantage of everything you can, to help during those times.
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier in the conversation, you were talking about the guilt trap, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, at least I feel, even just as a parent, period, is this feeling of I'm not doing enough. So what would you say to a single parent who feels like, man, I'm not doing enough, when in reality you're probably doing more than enough? But what would you say to those parents who feel like they're not doing enough?
Right. Well, we've touched a little bit on some of those things. I mean, yes, I agree with you. I would probably tell them first and foremost, you're doing better than what you think.
Absolutely.
You're doing way better than what you think. We're much harder on ourselves. Kids are very resilient, number one. They can handle more than what you think. They also are very smart. I know they pick up on things. But I think it goes back to that thing that kids don't really need a lot of stuff They don't need a lot of things. Yeah. Really creating happy memories with your children. And so sometimes it can be the simplest things. I feel like those are the things that impact our children probably the most. My adult child, who is 29, in conversations, I'll hear her talking to her kids sometimes, or we'll be in conversation, and I don't ever remember her bringing up a situation like, "Oh, Mom, I just remember that time that you got me those Nikes that I wanted, and I opened up the box, and man, I was so excited." Those aren't the stories that she's telling at 29. The stories that she's telling her kids and talking about are, "Mom, do you remember how we used to always, bake cookies on my birthday, or you would let me in the kitchen to help you cook. I would always get to stir the bowl when you were making pancakes, and I would stand up on the chair and or I helped you wash dishes, or if your kid likes to play sports, just taking 10 or 15 minutes to go outside and really give them that quality time that they're wanting,
right,
and that they're needing. I think that's the best way that we can improve maybe as being parents, because this day and age, it's so easy to get caught up and be distracted with other things that are going on. Is really keeping that focus on that quality time, making those good memories with the kids. That's what's going to be the most impactful to them later on. Those are going to be the things they remember.
I love that you're pointing that out. Yeah. Because sometimes it's just the inexpensive.
Yes.
The
simple things.
Random and simple things that they will remember. And even when you were talking about the story of Brittany, I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, looking back to my childhood, exactly the same thing.
Yes.
I can point memories, not stuff, not things.
That's so true.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I've heard that it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Yes.
So how do you assemble that team or the village, and what are some guidelines that you can offer maybe that you've practiced in your own life, guardrails, or this people yes, this people no?
Right. I think it's probably more simple than what we think. I am very thankful for my support group that I feel like I've had around me for a long time. It helps that I've been in a church for so long that I have some long-lasting friendships here in the church that offer a lot of stability for me and a lot of support for me. And I do have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful sister and a mom who have, been so gracious to help out and be supportive of their, with their time, with their just love and encouragement. I think since these people in your support group are going to be pouring into your life, they're going to be pouring into your children's life. I mean, I think the obvious thing that you would be looking for is, people who have the same morals and the same values that you have. Because if you want these people to have influence in your children's life, then you want to make sure that they have the same purpose and plans and ideas that fit yours, whatever that may be. And so I feel like that is really, really important. And I think, the Bible says, that we can judge a tree by its fruit. So I think you look for people who have well-behaving children, or who, or you watch them as they're with their kids and how they parent. And, if the kids are running wild and screaming all the time, and the parents are screaming at the kids all the time, then those may be people that you want to avoid. They may not have the best support and advice for you. But, looking to your small groups, to your church, I think that's probably the best place to go to find that extra support outside of your family, of course, with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Same values, same. And I love that you mentioned being plugged into the church. I think that's super key.
It is.
Not just for single parents, but for anyone to be able to have that support system.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've, just watching other people go through things or seeing things happen in the world, and I have the thought, how in the world do people go through hard times, difficult things, without the church, without God, without that support system, that foundation of, that gives you hope and encouragement? I would not want to try to live the last 30 years of my life without the Lord in my life at all. It would I probably wouldn't have survived.
Right. Right. Wow. Maybe there's somebody listening to us right now that is going through divorce. It's more common than we think, even in the church and really our society as a whole. So I guess I have two questions concerning that. But the first one would be, how can you as a parent best explain a divorce to your small kids?
Yes.
That's a huge question, I think.
It is. It's a big obstacle to tackle. I think first and foremost, if it's possible, if you and the other parent can plan ahead, if y'all can talk together about a plan to sit down with the child together or with your children and tell them together so that they can see that you're working as a team still. I think that is huge. I think keeping things as simple as possible with young children. They're probably not going to be asking a whole lot of questions where like maybe a 10, 11, 12, a teenager is going to. So with little children, I think just keeping it to the basics, letting them know that mommy and daddy are not going to be living in the same home anymore, and that, but encouraging them that we still love you. We are both still your parents. We are not going anywhere. That is probably the best case scenario. I know, unfortunately for me, in my position, neither one of my divorces happened to where we could sit down together and tell the children, tell our kids together. But if you can make that happen, I think that has a huge impact on that child, just to know that they can see that mommy and daddy are still civil with one another. I also think it's important to let the child know that it's okay, if you feel sad or, if you have questions, or because they probably won't in the moment. Kids process a whole lot slower than adults do. And so it would also help if you didn't wait till the last second, like the day that you're splitting up, to tell the child. If you can give the child some kind of warning, a week maybe, or 2 weeks even, just to kind of give the child time to process that change is coming, and it's not abrupt in their life. It's not just, okay, we have this talk and then, mommy and us are leaving to go live somewhere else. That can be, I think, pretty hard on the child if they don't have time to process it. I also think it's important to focus on the change that's going on and letting the child know that it's not their fault. For whatever reason, children will, I don't know what it is, they almost feel like they're an extension of their parents sometimes. I think that's the way it was explained to me one time, and that kids will take on the ownership that maybe they have done something, or maybe if they had just maybe been a better kid, or, done something different, that maybe this wouldn't have happened to mom and dad. So I think just reassuring them and letting them know that it's not their fault is huge. So how do you heal as a parent now? It's difficult, I'm not going to lie. And it is definitely a process that takes time. I saw a therapist the first time that I went through a divorce, and, my therapist explained it to me that, healing from trauma, and, divorce is a trauma. A lot of times it's like peeling an onion. You'll deal with something, you'll deal with a symptom of, anger, sadness, or whatever, and you'll kind of overcome that. And then, a couple months later, something else may pop up. Mm-hmm. An emotion or a feeling or something, and you kind of have to deal with things as they come. I think that communication is huge with yourself, allowing yourself to talk to someone, to reach out and get help if you need help. Don't isolate yourself, because it's easy to want to isolate, because I think you feel a lot of embarrassment. I know I did. I felt a lot of embarrassment. I felt just guilt. I felt like a failure. And so I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to talk to a lot of people. But I really feel like pushing yourself past what feels comfortable and reaching out, asking for help, spending time with the Lord, praying. I mean, God is there for us. I mean, God wants to help us walk through divorce. He wants to be there for us. He will come and comfort, and He will bring strength to you when you need it. And I think with the children, it's basically the same thing. You just have to leave the door open for communication. Don't ever let the divorce be something that we talked about that one time. We're going to sweep it under the carpet, and we're going to let it be the big elephant in the room that the family never talks about. That is not a good way to handle any situation that you're going through. Allowing the kids to ask questions. They may be fine for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden they may start having questions, or they may start showing signs of being sad or depressed. And you, just as a parent, you just got to be aware, and you've got, be willing to get them help if they need help. It's okay to reach out and ask others to pour into you and to help you through those difficult times, because it's a process.
Yeah. And I love, by the way, that's one of the things I love the most about how you parent. Especially when the level of communication you have and openness that you have with your daughter, it's really inspiring. And I think it extended from just, like you said, keeping the door open. And
yes, and being very intentional about creating moments.
That's awesome.
Small moments. You start small of communication, really asking questions. Being a good listener is a huge, huge part of that. I think it can be hard as a parent sometimes when kids come and want to talk to you, that you want to be the fixer, or and sometimes they just need you to listen. They don't really need you to be mom, well, I'm going to tell you what you did wrong here, and how you can fix this here, and now you need to go do this. Sometimes it's learning, it's listening from the Holy Spirit, it's knowing when to listen and then when to give input. But yes, being very intentional about communication with your kids is very, very important.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I'm more of an input person. Input. And so just being able to listen.
Here, let me just tell you what you need to do.
That's awesome. Now, obviously people go through divorce. So then how, I guess the question is, what is your opinion on dating again? I mean, how soon? Yes, no, why?
Okay. Yes, I can obviously only speak from my own experience, from what I've learned, and offer my own opinion here. I really feel like if you can wait a year, I feel like that's a good timeline to give yourself time to process and fully heal as a person, and it gives your kids an adjustment period for them, because they're going to be going through a lot of new changes in their life. Holidays are going to be different, birthdays are going to be different, and maybe giving you going through those firsts with your children and just being there for them during those new seasons of dealing with those is really, really, really important. I think not everyone will wait that long. Plus, I think it depends on whether you're the parent who has the children most of the time, or whether you're the parent that only gets them every other weekend. That plays a big role into when to start dating, because obviously when you start dating, that's going to pull you away from your children. It's going to pull you away, from time with them. And so you want to make sure that your kids are stable emotionally and that they've healed from all the changes of the divorce. It doesn't mean that it's going to make it easy on them. There still may be some resistance with some kids if you get ready to introduce them to someone after a period of dating. I don't recommend that they meet every person that you're dating. I think if you've dated someone for 4 to 6 months, by that point you should kind of know if this is a person that you see yourself being with on a long-term basis. Then I think it's okay to start introducing the children slowly to that person. Right. But I would, and I say this from experience, because when I started dating, when Brittany was probably about 8 or 9, she really struggled with it. She struggled with it a lot because it was me and her for almost 2 years. And I waited. It wasn't like I did it early. It wasn't like I was dating early. We waited, before I started dating. But she still really struggled with feeling like someone was taking her mom away because we became so close.
Yeah.
Because it was just her and I during that 2 years. And I don't know that I was sympathetic enough maybe to her feel. I thought that maybe she was just feeling some jealousy and that she would adjust and that, but I really think after talking with her as an adult now, us looking back on it, that I may have pushed a little too soon with her. She may not have been ready. And I feel like that's important because I feel like the kid, it's not just you moving on in the relationship, it's the children. And if the person that you're dating has children, then that brings in a whole nother level of change that you have to deal with. And so I just think you really have to be sensitive to your children. Not that your world has to revolve around them, but I feel like they are your responsibility until they're 18. And I think that they need to be able to have some sort of input into that relationship. If you force it, I really feel like it will cause damage between you and that child, unfortunately. So it can be kind of a sticky situation. I decided pretty early on with Kaylee that I wasn't going to date a lot. I haven't been looking to date. I really chose to just focus my time on being the best parent for her that I could be. If God brought someone in, that would be different, but I certainly didn't. I haven't been, looking for that. Right. I decided not to do that the second time around. And I feel like that's paid off for me. And I know that there are blended families. I know blended families. I am friends with blended families who have been very successful at, remarrying after a divorce and the families coming together. I just think picking the right person is a huge thing with that, and involving the kids and letting them have some sort of input, I feel like is huge too.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Which leads me to this question. Obviously you mentioned you're a part of the church. So what can we do, pastors, leaders, the church, what can we do to help single parents walk through the journey?
This is not coming from a personal experience, but I do know from talking with some others, I think it's real important for the church to be accepting, number one, of single parents and not being judgmental. I think it's easy sometimes for outsiders to maybe be judgmental towards, someone who's gone through divorce. Obviously we know God is not for divorce, and that's not his original plan. But thankfully, our God is a forgiving God, and what better place for hurting single moms who need people around them to support them and love them. If the church is not going to be available, then where are they going to go?
Exactly.
Where are they going to be accepted? Like I said, I think our church has done a really great job of not doing that. But I just did want to bring that up. I think offering prayer support, any kind of encouragement, loving on their kids, reaching out to them to help them get involved. Right. Because they may be feeling, embarrassed or ashamed if it's been a recent divorce, or if it happened in the church, that can be pretty embarrassing. And so really reaching out to those single parents, trying to include them, trying to get them involved, get them involved in a small group, invite them to go do things. That makes a huge difference. And then on a practical level, I know one time we had a mechanic here in the church. And he came up to me and one day and said, "You know what?" He said, "The Lord just really laid it on my heart that the next time you need an oil change," he said, "I want you to call me." He said, "I want you to bring your vehicle to me. I will do a tune-up and an oil change, and I just want to bless you with that. So that was just a real practical thing that he was able to do.
Right.
That was, not everybody can do that. Not all of us know how to do oil changes, but that was something practical, that he did that really meant a lot to me. I mean, it really touched me. It really made me feel like the Lord was thinking about me to put that on his heart to do that for me.
Yeah.
So I think just being sensitive to the Lord in practical ways, to maybe offer to babysit for that single
that
parent,
is a really good one.
giving them, even if it's just, can I watch your kids for an hour on Saturday, and you just go take an hour to yourself. That's a really practical way to help single parents. But yeah, I think the most important thing is the love, the support, the encouragement, making them feel accepted. Those are huge.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. So take notes, right?
Yes.
People, take notes.
Yes, please.
Be aware. If you could say something to single parents, anything, a word of encouragement, what would you say to them?
I would say you're enough. You're more than capable. I mean, especially if you're a Christian and you're a believer and you have God on your side. I mean, I know I have depended on the Lord as my husband, as my provider, and he's always shown up. He's never disappointed me.
Amen.
And sometimes he's not going to chase you down and he is not going to force you to do anything. But all it takes is just a simple cry of your heart.
Yeah.
If you will just cry out to the Lord, let him know what how you're feeling. Talk to him like you would a friend. Tell him what you're going through. I mean, the Lord has been so gracious to me and just over the years and just blessing me. He has blessed me financially. He has just encouraged me through the word, through worship, times of worship. Just intimate worship by myself. So really pressing into the Lord is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself. And then just don't be afraid to ask for help when you need help. Don't be afraid to let people know that you need something or that you're hurting. You don't isolate.
Wow.
That's probably...
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Again, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from this.
I hope so. I hope someone can learn from, I feel like most of mine has just been through trial and error, and if I can save someone else from making the same mistakes that I did by sharing, then, I mean, what an awesome opportunity to be able to do that.
Well, like I said, you have a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate you sharing everything, your stories, your life experience, and so
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone listening, and we just hope you're having a great week, and we'll see you next time with another podcast. God bless you. Bye-bye.